It's 7 o'clock, so we'll call this meeting to order. This is the May 18th meeting of the Frankfort Village Board, and we ask our clerk, Brian Feary, to take the roll, please.
Mayor Holland?
Here.
Trustee Severia?
Here.
Trustee Farina?
Here.
Trustee Petro?
Here.
Trustee Clavio?
Here.
Trustee Ogle?
Here.
Trustee Borelli?
Here.
Village Clerk? Attorney Mahoney?
Here.
Attorney Lamore?
Present.
Chief Barica?
Present.
Administrator Pisha?
Here.
Assistant Administrator Cook?
Present.
All here.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item on our agenda is what we call the unanimous consent agenda. All items on the unanimous consent agenda are considered routine in nature and will be voted on after a single motion. If one of the trustees wants to discuss one of the items in more detail, we'll just remove it from the consent agenda. So I first ask, do any trustees want to remove any items from the consent agenda? Not hearing any. We do want the audience who is watching this broadcast to know something about the items that we're passing. And we do have some interesting ones this evening, so we will discuss each of them just briefly. The first one is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting on May 4th. And the second one is the approval of the bills. And let's first have a motion to approve this consent agenda. Good idea. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Severia and Trustee Farina for the motion and the second. Now we'll go on and say what the items are that we're going to be voting on. The first one is the approval of the minutes from our meeting of May 4th. The second one is the approval of the bills. And we'll go to Trustee Borelli for a report on those. No, Trustee Severia. Right.
Hey, no,
trustee.
Trustee Borelli can do it if he likes.
No.
Thank you, Mayor. The bills tonight total $439,545.59. A couple items to point out. We had a line item for $14,607 to Bill's lawn maintenance for municipal mowing. And we also had a line item for $90,244 to Clark Environmental for the May and June mosquito spraying. Also to point out, the payroll expense for May, as of May 15th, was $362,648.47. Those are the bills for this evening, Mayor.
Thank you, Gene. And then we have one very interesting item from our Economic Development Committee, and we'll go to the chair of the Economic Development Committee, Trustee Petro, for a report on that item.
Thank you, Mayor Holland. Tonight, we are going to discuss the results from the May 13th, 2020 meeting. The Economic Development Committee discussed the resident incentive for purchases to promote the local economy. And for short, we are going to call that RIPPLE, a program designed to encourage residents to patronize our local businesses forced to close during the COVID-19 pandemic. The program provides a one-time reimbursement in the form of a $50 credit on a future water bill for each residential household within the village of Frankfort for purchases made at qualifying businesses between June 1st and July 31st, 2020. The purchases must total $300 with a minimum of $200 at a qualifying retail store and $100 at local restaurants, with a limit of 1 credit per household. Multiple purchases, including gift cards, can be made to achieve the qualifying amount in both categories. The program is designed to be administered through the water billing system due to its existing capability. However, the funding of the program will be sourced from the Corporate Capital Fund and paid by the taxpayers of the Village of Frankfort and not Frankfort utility customer. It was the consensus of the committee to forward the recommendation to the Village Board to approve the RIPPLE program as presented.
Well, thank you, Jessica. Very interesting program indeed. So with that, those are all of the items on the consent agenda this evening. Are there any questions or comments from the trustees? Then we'll go to our clerk, Brian Feary, for the vote.
Okay. Trustee Borelli,
Yes.
trustee Clavio,
Aye.
trustee Farina,
Yes.
trustee Ogle,
Yes.
trustee Petro,
Yes.
trustee Severia.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And that brings us to what the part of our meeting we call the mayor's report. The first item on the mayor's report is Memorial Day ceremony. This year, we're not going to have the typical 300 to 400 person gathering that we normally have for Memorial Day. We're going to instead have a virtual Memorial Day. And we actually made a video this last weekend of the parts of the Memorial Day ceremony that will be put together. And the video even includes participation by the Hickory Creek Middle School band, namely Doug Adams did work out for Jackson Cummings and Aiden Reed to play taps from their home. And they were able to videotape that in their homes, and they could electronically send it to us, and we will insert that in the Memorial Day ceremony. So we're doing the best we can with that. The second item on the mayor's report is a resolution supporting the Will County Governmental League's letter to Governor J.B. Pritzker on the Restore Illinois plan. And I have a little comment to make about that. And I think it's important for our residents to know that Frankfort is following the governor's executive orders, and we will continue to do so. But in a recent meeting with representatives of Silver Cross Hospital, they commented that their ICU unit is operating normally, and the hospital is not overcrowded. They are able to handle the number of COVID-19 patients that exist in our local area. Local healthcare services have just not been as taxed as Chicago's healthcare services. Suburbs have not had to convert convention centers to healthcare facilities. It seems reasonable to believe that our less congested form of living in the suburbs makes the suburbs less vulnerable to the spread of a virus. It is just easier for people in the suburbs to maintain social distancing than for people in the city to maintain social distancing. For these reasons, we are supporting a letter from members of the Will County Governmental League that asked the governor to consider separating our area from the city of Chicago in his Restore Illinois plan. The Will County Governmental League is a council of governments that is created by state and federal laws, and they represent local municipal interests. It's up to the state health experts to either agree or disagree with us. We are only asking, and we will abide by their decision, as we are now abiding by their decisions. Yes, I think that in our small, or in our community, our small businesses may be able to open sooner here than similar businesses in Chicago, essentially because our lifestyle and our businesses are not as congested as Chicago's. I agree that if it cannot be done reasonably safely, then it should not be done. The governor's health experts will decide this issue. So I'm going to entertain a motion to support the Will County Governmental League's letter to Governor Pritzker on the Restore Illinois plan.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by trustee Borelli, I think it was, and a second by trustee Petro. Is there any discussion? Then let's go to our clerk, Brian Feary, for the vote.
Trustee Clavio,
Yes.
trustee Farina,
Yes.
trustee Ogle,
Yes.
trustee Petro,
Yes.
trustee Severia,
Yes.
trustee Borelli.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next item on the mayor's report is the 2020 calendar of events. We are adjusting our calendar according to the governor's Restore Illinois plan. And we just talked about the Memorial Day ceremony. We're also now talking about a virtual fishing derby. The fishing derby is one of our next events that comes up, and we think we can do that. We're going to encourage parents to go fishing with their children and take some videos of the fishing activities, and especially a video of the size of the largest fish caught, something with a ruler on it, and we'll award a prize through, I suppose, the mail for the largest fish caught in the various age categories. And it sounds like it might be a fun event. So that's how we're planning on handling that issue. We did cancel our open house, which was supposed to be this week. And that again is in keeping with not having groups of people gather. I think that we did have quite a robust discussion at our Wednesday committee meeting about the farmers market. And perhaps Trustee Clavio, who's the chairperson of our community services committee, could make some comments about the discussion about the farmers market.
Certainly, Jim, thank you. Like Mayor Holland said, we had a Zoom committee meeting on Wednesday, which in its own right was a first because it's the first committee meetings we've had via virtual and via Zoom. They were actually very productive, though. Very robust is a good word. Very in-depth too. Conversation about the market, reopening that, keeping it closed, the safety, the appearances, whether the vendors will come, whether the patrons come. And I think the committee as a whole did an excellent job of covering all the nuances. We, as everyone knows, our current location is in the Brighter Green parking lot and surrounding parking lots there. Part of the discussion was to move the market behind the trolley barn in the parking lot there to allow for additional safety considerations of in and out gates, one-way traffic, proper social distancing of both the vendors and the patrons, using masks, providing masks, senior hours, no kids, no dogs, kids, dogs, no entertainment, no consume on the property. I can go on and on and on with the list. The other interesting part is some members of our committee have actually went above and beyond and researched other farmers markets, went to other towns who are actually having their farmers market and have checked those out as well as far as what changes they've done and how they've made it work for their citizens. Like anything we do, it's going to be, some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it, and some people just quite frankly don't voice their opinion. So there is no right or wrong answer, but the committee did decide to move forward with a modified market, I believe starting June 1st for the summer, and to obviously to maintain and monitor safety standards. And like the mayor just said, if we see an uptick due to any activity, it would be promptly taken care of, and the market would not continue at that point. But the getting back to normal, we're going to have a modified market. It's not going to be like we usually have with market. It's not going to be all the entertainment. It's not going to be the wide open space, but it's going to be a market with fresh food, fresh vegetables, and an area where people can actually go to gather those items. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, John. Perhaps Administrator Picha, you could comment on the date. On the
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to do that under my report, but just the date will actually be the starting date of our traditional summer market, which is June 7th. Staff has been working daily. We've been having our own Zoom meetings to discuss the layout. We're working with the vendors to work out those details as well. So right now, we're not sure exactly where it's going to be. It could be part of it in the old, in the Fox lumber lot and some of it in the brighter green lot, because there are some power needs for some of the vendors. So there's a lot of moving parts to it right now. I think it is important to note that we are following the guidance of the Illinois Farmers Market Association, that they've put out sample guidelines for their members. And I think it's important to know that for our market, we are following those guidelines. I think it's helpful that they have a lot of experience, so that's why we're following those. And this is going to be a no-touch market, meaning that to limit some of the exposures, that you will not be able to, pre-touch any produce or any of the products ahead of time. Basically, it's kind of, you point to what you want and the vendor will bag it up. So we're trying to do our best with that. There will be other safety measures potentially inside the market area itself, where people will be requested to wear masks, even though it is outdoors, and also to, again, maintain social distancing. And just also, again, we're going to have to keep an eye on the crowds and the number of people that are going to be allowed in any one time as well. So we appreciate your cooperation. And I think, as the mayor said, it's going to be, it will be moving parts, and that's part of the discussion. And unfortunately, if it becomes way too popular, we may have to control it that way as well, because again, the idea is we still want it to be a safe market.
Thank you, Rob. One thing we aren't going to change this coming spring is the beautification awards. So those will start up any time now that somebody wants to submit a neighbor or some building that they see in Frankfort, or some landscaping, or somebody's taken some extra effort to make our town look better. We want to recognize them, and we give them a nice little certificate that says they got a beautification award that's very suitable for framing, as well as something they can put in their yard that says, I got a beautification award. And that's a great thing to be doing during a pandemic, is to work in your yard and make it look better. So let's recognize those people. And finally, we're proud of Frankfort residents, because you have been turning in your census forms. We have a 79.2% of Frankfort households have completed the 2020 U.S. Census form. And that compares to the national response of only 59%. Illinois is 64%, Will County is 72%, and Frankfort's is 79%. So good for us. Remember that the census determines a lot of our revenue from federal and state sources. So it's very important to all of us. And that concludes the mayor's report. So we'll go to our police chief, John Barica, for the police department report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to caution our residents again on email scams and phishing emails that come out. We've seen an increase in those reports, either saying they have explicit pictures of you and they're demanding either Bitcoin or gift cards to be sent to them, or there's also been some where it says it's your bank and they're looking for more information and they ask you to input it. If you get an email, especially from a bank or something else like that, that's unsolicited, you should call the bank itself. If you have one that appears that they're saying that they have pictures or something of you, call us and we can take a look at it. But you should not start sending money or sending credit card information over your computers. They are usually just phishing, just trying to see who they can get to respond to that. So be careful on those. Again, remind our residents that we do have online reporting. As we stated before, we are not going to everybody's house. Obviously, with the COVID going around, we're trying to reduce any chances of having interactions. So we're doing a lot by phone, but we've seen an increase to our online reporting, which has been very nice. We handle all those reports the same way. We get the initial information and an officer will still contact you to get the rest of the information and put that through. But nice, easy, and convenient too. You can put those in at any time and you can do them whether at home or away. Easy to get the information into us. I want to remind residents to report suspicious activity. And although oftentimes when people think suspicious activity, they think it's nighttime, after hours when something's going on. Suspicious activity could be in the middle of the day. We have a lot of people home right now that are around their houses and things may be out of the ordinary. They may not want to bother us, but please do. We are still here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you see something that doesn't look right, we'd rather get the call then to find out. Luckily, we have not seen the increase in our activity, but several other areas have seen people stealing cars out of garages during the day. when they're left open. So if you see something doesn't look right, call us, let us check it out just then. And then, of course, make sure on that note to lock your doors, put your garage doors down, and do not leave your keys or key fobs in your cars. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you, John. And now for the village administrator's report, we go to our village administrator, Rob Pisha.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want a little dovetail on the fishing thing that the Chief Bariga talked about. I just want to remind people as well, Mayor, you mentioned the census, that census takers will not call your house and ask you for sensitive information. So please be aware, if you get a call and it's somebody saying that they're from the census and they're doing a follow-up or anything like that, they will not ask you for any information, pertinent information. So please be aware that that again is a scam, and you shouldn't get any calls from the census that is asking for that kind of details. Also want to report that we had probably a little over 4.5 inches of rain yesterday. I'm happy to report that I did talk to both Terry Kessel, the superintendent of streets, and Mike Stone with utilities, and that we did not have any serious issues. There were some localized flooding, but overall, once again, the village did well in the midst of a very heavy downpour. So happy with the way the planning has been with our neighborhoods. Also, just to ask the residents for help if they do see an issue where looks like their street is flooding, that if they know that there's a sewer inlet in their street, that if they can check it for leaves and debris, because sometimes it just gets clogged up, and it can help us to keep the water moving if they clear that off. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Rob. And now for the village attorney's report, we go to Attorney Hannah Lamore or George Mahoney.
No report tonight, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Hannah. And that brings us to the part of our meeting we call other business. And at least on my screen, Margaret, you're right next to me. So we're going to start with you tonight. Trustee Farina.
Thank you, Mayor Hallen. I just wanted to congratulate the class of 2020, all the graduates in our community from grammar school, high school, undergrad, and graduate. I can appreciate all the hard work you did, and you certainly deserve that commencement walk. What a great way to start out life. They say with crisis comes opportunity. And so I'm sure this will shape you in our future as a community. And I wish you the best of luck and best wishes. Thank you, Mayor Holland. That's it.
Thank you, Margaret. Trustee Severia.
I've got nothing tonight there, Mayor.
Class of 2020.
Thank you, Jean. And let's see, Trustee Ogle.
Thank you, Mayor. I've had a couple questions that have come up, and maybe somebody has an answer for these ones. They're coming up soon. On some of the other events, the car club, concerts on the green, the movie night, and also the library on the green. I think it's called Fridays on the Green at this point. Those are coming up pretty quick. Whether there's been any determinations on what's being done with those, they're being moved. Like the fishing derby is gone virtual. People have been asking, and so if there's been any determinations on those events, maybe Rob can answer that question. Or
Yeah, I have some of the answers, Keith. I've heard from the Chamber of Commerce that concerts on the green, and I believe it's for both June and July, but at least for June, they canceled them. Maybe somebody else can confirm that. I have not heard from the library district about Fridays on the Green, one of my favorite events.
yeah,
Yeah, they're great. And what else do we have?
movie night and car club.
Movie night, I believe the one in June is out, right, Rob?
That is correct.
Yeah, we were part of that. And so Sue Lynchy was in on that decision along with the other sponsors, the Park District. And I think some of the civic groups get involved in that too, but.
Right.
And the car club's interesting. Sue, I think, is reaching out to them this week. Essentially, where we think we can go with the car club is if they want to have their events, as long as we're only at phase 2 where we are right now, and I believe in phase 3 also in the governor's plan, we can't have gatherings of more than 10 people. Cruise night. And we need to speak to the car club to see what they would like to do.
Thank you very much, Mayor. That was all I had tonight.
Anything more on that, Rob, that you have?
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Mayor. I believe Sue was going to reach out to the car club. I think the big issue is that what we were kind of conveying is that while we wouldn't prohibit them from coming up and using our parking lots, that we would not be reserving parking places. And as you said, Mayor, using really anything from the government to hold, like make it an organized event. But again, if people wanted to come up and display their cars, certainly we're not going to stop that. But again, it's going to get into, we'll just have to monitor for social distancing. And we'll see actually how many of the car club members, as many of our retired, will actually want to come up there anyway.
So next, Trustee Petro.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Trustee Ogle, for bringing up some of the events in question. And I think that's just one of the things I wanted to touch on tonight is, you know, in Frankfort, we just come to expect so many of these lovely events and we look forward to them every year. I'm sure everybody has their favorites. And I think it's just important to recognize that there can be some disappointing events that are canceled, but I do want to highlight the creativity that the village board and the staff and all through the letters and the recommendations that have come in from our residents on ways that we can modify that to meet the governor's orders as we restore Illinois, down to a virtual fishing derby. I mean, just adding a little bit of fun and something to look forward to in a modified market. And it's not going to be perfect, but I think that that innovation and flexibility and creativity has really been shown here. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Jessica. Trustee Clavio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have anything further this week. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Trustee Borelli.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we prepare to observe Memorial Day, I want to thank all the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country as we're out celebrating with our families and in a social distant way. Remember what it's all about. And thank you. I want to thank the staff for the amount of work that they're putting into this modified farmers market. I think the normal farmers market is already a lot of work. Like there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. It's seamless to those of us that just visited, but there's a lot that goes behind just a normal market. There's a lot of nuances. Trustee Clavio touched on them, so I do appreciate all the work that you're putting into making that happen for our residents. And speaking of work and doing research, there's another topic that's come up quite a bit. The trustees have seen and the mayor have seen emails from residents. We've seen it on social media, talking to neighbors. There's some discussion of perhaps closing Kansas Street to allow the businesses to expand their operations into the street, creating a social distant, creating more opportunities for social distancing within their business. And so I think there's a lot of nuances with that, but I think it's probably worth discussing at a committee meeting here soon. Obviously, other towns have done it or are looking into it, I should say. I know Hinsdale passed an ordinance. I don't know if they're implementing it. I don't know if there's a question as to whether or not it actually is allowed under the governor's plan. So there's quite a bit of research that'll go into it, but there's just been a lot of traction from our residents. So I think it's worth discussing in a public forum. And given that our next meeting isn't until June, our next committee meeting isn't until June 10th, perhaps maybe we do a committee of the whole before or after our next village board meeting to sort of not push it off another 3.5 weeks. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, Trustee Borelli, let's at least have our staff take a look at it, talk to the people involved. There may be other places in the village too that could have more outside seating. In the case of our downtown, of course, we not only need to speak to the restaurants, but you need to speak to the other merchants there that it impacts. And just off the top of my head, the first thing that comes to my mind, the busy time for a restaurant is Friday and Saturday night. And if they could do it after the businesses, other businesses close and take it all down by the morning or whatever, maybe something can be done there. Who knows? But I think in Hinsdale, they are talking about, again, they're waiting for phase 4 before the restaurants open. This thing that they passed and is being talked about on the internet, I don't think means that the restaurants are open now because the governor's order says they can't be. It still requires getting to phase 4. But Keith, you had a question?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. You and I and the staff have gone through some of these discussions of closing down Kansas Street.
Oh, yeah.
And the things that came up, and I've seen it on social media, also the Hinsdale, there are a couple other communities that are looking to do this. Obviously, the Ash Street merchants, in order to close that, we close off access to their businesses, which has been an issue. And we certainly need to engage the restaurants on this. At a 25% seating capacity, even if you expand it, are they able to bring back staff? Does it make sense for them to do this? Is this a financially viable thing? I think it's a great thing to explore, but driven by the residents or somebody on social media, we really need to make sure the restaurants are behind this, that the other merchants are not negatively impacted by this before we bring this to a committee. And then also there, as I think the mayor pointed out too, there are some other areas that could be expanded for outdoor. I love the al fresco, the outside kind of atmosphere, and to make a walkable downtown has always been kind of a vision to do it, but it has to work for everybody involved. And as much damage has already been done to our economies, the last thing we want to do is put the hurt on somebody else again. So,
good points from everybody. Adam?
Oh yeah, I absolutely great points, and definitely ones I've thought about. And I know it's a very slippery slope. I've been involved with those previous discussions on closing Kansas Street. I know they've been met with a lot of resistance from business owners. Obviously, right now there's only curbside pickup for certain businesses, so there's a whole lot of nuances to it. But I agree with you, Trustee Ogle, to first at least reach out to the businesses to see if they're interested. If they're not, then it's probably not worth bringing to a committee. But I wanted us to at least explore it. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, Jessica.
Thank you. So I agree with Adam too. I feel like maybe a potential committee of the whole to explore some of those options and have staff have some time to, get with the restaurants, get some, basic information would probably be a good timing versus waiting for a whole nother committee meeting night. Just because we'll probably have some updated information right before our village board meeting with the governor's new orders for restore. And maybe that will help us make the best decision for Frankfort.
Good suggestion. So, Rob, you're hearing some marching orders for our village administration to see if we can find out a little bit from the restaurants, from the other merchants. Think of different timings. Think of different ways maybe this would work and might be able to help people and not hurt people. We above all don't want to do any harm. So see if we can time something for our next board meeting or a committee of the whole meeting before.
I'll certainly discuss with the other staff, and we'll come up with a game plan to at least talk to the restaurants, number one, because to see if they would even be interested in something like that. And ultimately, like I said, because a lot of it's going to fall on them for, if you're talking about having tables in the middle of Kansas Street, that who's setting them up, who's taking it down. So a lot of nuances, but certainly we can talk to the restaurants first to see if they'd be interested before we go to the other businesses, because of the fact that if they're not interested, then it's kind of a moot point.
Perfect. Okay, Clerk Feary.
I just want to take a real quick second here to recognize Chief Erika and the women and men of the Frankfort Police Department. They've been given a horrible job. They've been with this virus, having to educate residents and educate people regarding the governor's orders. They've used professionalism and humor, and they're just outstanding. I'm very, very proud to know some of the officers of the Frankfort Police Department. So thanks, Chief. Also, it's summertime, so I was been reminded by a couple of the trustees that we are able to have summertime business casual at our meetings coming up. So that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you, Brian. And that brings us to the part of our meeting we call public comments. Did we get any public comments for this meeting?
No public comments, Mr. Mayor.
Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, and Margaret tried to give us a second. She's on mute. And we'll take the second from Trustee Severia. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Stay well.
Have a good night, everyone.
Right.